on an all-new Dr. Phil. There was a double-digit spike in hate crimes last year, and it has continued to rise.
Honestly, I was holding on for dear life.
Joey says he was punched, kicked, pepper sprayed only because he is Jewish.
I spent 8 years in the American white supremacist, neo-Nazi skinhead movement. I thought I hated Jews, blacks. The truth is.
Do you guys think this was a worthwhile discussion to have? Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Well, we are back for season 21. This season, I resolved to make all of you an even bigger part of what we do, so I brought our studio audience up close and personal right here on stage to participate in real time and give you a more active voice in our discussion. Now, we have always said that you, the viewers, determine our content. You decide what I deal with by telling us what is most important to you and your family. We asked you what was on your mind, and boy, oh boy, did you respond. In fact, you did not hold back about the challenges you are facing, questions you need answers, problems you need help solving. So we're going to tackle it head on this season, whether it's good, bad, or downright ugly. Whatever the issue is, I promise you down to earth, common sense, truth-based, fact-based, and absolutely no spin information. Let's continue our conversation on the alarming hate crime trend that's happening more and more on the streets of America. Yesterday, we had a very lovely family who said they were attacked at a fast food restaurant merely for being Asian. Narissa, her husband Gabriel, and daughter Patricia shared a heartbreaking story they said left them with bruised bodies and broken spirits. Here's what happened.
The number of hate crimes in the U.S. rose last year to the highest level in more than a decade.
There has been a massive uptick in attacks against Asian Americans.
The Asian community saw a 224% increase in hate crimes. And the uptick in violence is most likely due to the scapegoating of the Asian community for the COVID-19 pandemic.
A beauty supply store owner in North Harris County speaking out after she was attacked. The attack left Kim bloodied and bruised with a broken nose.
This 91-year-old man was shoved to the ground in Oakland, California. And this 84-year-old Asian man lost his life after he was brutally shoved in San Francisco.
A drive-through encounter turns nasty when a man starts hurling racial insults at a family.
It went from bad to worse. In a matter of minutes.
Once he got a good look at my face and my mom's face, that's when he started verbally abusing us, mocking us with a racist Asian accent.
The driver pulls up alongside them, and then they hear this.
Oh, you're so Asian. Oh, I want to kill you.
This escalated pretty fast.
Unfortunately, it turned into an assault on both of my parents.
The suspect appears to grab Narissa's neck. A witness tries to intervene. The father's rib is broken, as are their hearts.
He was banging on the car door. When I saw that happen, I told him, keep off my daughter. And that's when he assaulted me. Then he pushed me down towards the pavement of the parking area. That's where my rib hit. I felt it crack.
It took a lot of manpower for us to separate the both of them.
When the detectives spoke to the family, they were treated as though they were the suspects. Narissa, can you tell Dr. Phil about what the detective said to you a few days after the incident?
Kung meron daw kaming nasabing hindi maganda, kaya siya nagalit kung bakit niya kami gustong patayin.
She was being asked if there was anything that was said to him that caused him to verbally abuse us and assault my parents.
I'm sorry. It's disgusting. At one point, you say that he was choking your mother.
He wanted to hit my mom's face, but it hit her in the chest.
I'm so sorry this happened. She's obviously still very traumatized by this.
We're very much all traumatized. We're still fighting back against this.
This is a family that you would be proud to know and have in your community. Stand up right now. I need to stand up. I just want you guys to look around the room and see.
You know, not only do we need justice for what has happened to us, but to anyone else, not only within the Asian American community, but to other vulnerable and marginalized communities as well.
As I mentioned yesterday, disturbing numbers from the FBI show hate and racism are alive and well in America. Sad but true. From 2020 to 2021, a sample of some of the largest cities in America showed a little over 8,000 hate crimes were reported. And the Justice Department believes that actual number might be much, much higher because many incidents don't get reported to police because people just don't want to deal with it. And it's not just the Asian community experiencing a rise in hatred against them. Violent acts against Jewish Americans, the most targeted religious group, increased by 59%. You know, I see these numbers and I ask myself, what in the hell is going on? I mean, seriously, take a look at this.
Crisis in the Middle East may be sparking hate crimes against Jewish people.
Video which was posted to social media shows what police are calling a brawl or a fight right outside the restaurant. We also have some security camera video of another incident being investigated by the LAPD as a possible hate crime. It shows an Orthodox Jewish man being chased by a caravan of people waving Palestinian flags.
We're under fire. He's got an automatic weapon. He's firing out in front of the synagogue.
11 people were killed. Sources tell us that the suspect ran into the synagogue yelling, "Jews must die."
Today, we're confronting anti-Semitic hate crimes by putting a spotlight on the face and voice of just one of the many victims. My first guest, Joey, says he was recently punched, kicked, pepper sprayed, and targeted with slurs by a group of young men only because he is Jewish.
First tonight, the ceasefire in the Middle East has done little to calm tensions in New York City.
And one night after protests turned violent in Manhattan, the man who was at the center of this attack in the Diamond District is telling his story.
A bruised Joseph Borgen says that's him on the ground in this video being attacked by a group of men.
And they were macing me or pepper spray for like a minute straight. Kicked me, punched me, beat me with crutches, hit me with flags.
In addition to the bruises, he says he suffered a concussion. Borgen was alone on his way to attend a pro-Israel rally.
I never made it to the rally. Next thing you know, before I could even react, I was surrounded by like a crowd. They were, making like anti-Jewish comments.
What happened last night is absolutely unacceptable. There's no place for anti-Semitism in New York City. We will not tolerate it. My message is very clear. Anyone who commits such an act is going to be arrested and prosecuted.
Dozens of others were taken into police custody after pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli brawlers squared off in Times Square, throwing objects and other projectiles.
We all want peace. We all want to get along. And, violence is not the answer.
First off, I have to say, I'm so sorry you went through that. Come on, it's crazy, right?
It was a cliche. I said that it can happen anywhere. Anti-Semitism. I've been in New York my entire life. I grew up in Long Island. I've been in this city for the past decade. And yeah, like I said, it was a cliche, I would say, but I never actually believed it until that day.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, because you're very passionate about what you believe, and you were headed to an event, right?
It was the day of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire.
Right.
So there was a rally called just to go out and show our support for Israel as a Jewish people, as a Jewish country, and that's exactly what I was doing. Can you imagine ever doing what was done to you
to someone else because of what they believed?
No, I don't have that much hate in me for anything or anyone. You need to be some sort of crazy person to do what you did. And in the heart of Times Square, in the middle of the day, you know, without fear of repercussion or any consequence, I mean, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people around. So you're not getting away with anything in that moment. You clearly just want to prove a point and show that you can do this and you're going to do this and you don't care.
You said it at one point, you thought, this is it. I'm going to die on the streets of New York here.
Honestly, I was holding on for dear life. I just braced, grabbed my head, my neck area, and I didn't know when it was going to end. I didn't know how it was going to end, if someone was going to come help me. I really had no idea in that moment. And yeah, those thoughts were running through my head, unfortunately, if this really could be it. I mean, it was like just a degrading experience overall. It was embarrassing. And I mean, in the immediate aftermath, I was in so much pain. My whole body was on fire. I had concussion. My wrist is still messed up. I had to get surgery a few months ago. So this is over a year later. I'm still dealing with a lot of these residual effects from what took place.
You've seen the horrific video. He's had to have surgery. He did have a concussion, torn ligaments in his arms. This was not something that you just kind of get up and shake off. You were taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is America. And this is happening because they saw something on your head.
Just this yarmulke like I'm wearing myself today.
Yeah. The escalation in hate crimes against the Jewish community is up over 59% in the last year. And it just doesn't seem to get much media attention, and it doesn't seem to get much attention from the law enforcement community. What do you think about that? And later, when you look back at the things that you believed, the things that group did, that gang did at the time, can you even imagine being involved in that at this point? Tomorrow, there have been 27 school shootings so far this year.
I just started screaming her name, but I never heard anything back.
The police officers, we failed you.
What do all these school shooters have in common?
They feel like the world has ignored them, and now they're trying to get everybody to pay attention.
Lock up your guns where they cannot get to them. That's tomorrow. Then on Friday,
she had come out to her teacher as transgender.
There are parents who are going to reject their identities.
Are schools overstepping and trying to take the place of parents? That's Friday.
Rioters who stormed the Capitol this month wore clothing with anti-Semitic images and messages.
Even among the many disturbing images the country confronted on January 6th, some were more painful than others for some Americans.
It must hit you viscerally when you see Camp Auschwitz shirts as part of January 6th.
Of course it does.
How could it not? Glickman is one of the survivors of the deadliest attack on Jews in American history. She was inside the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh that horrific October day in 2018 when a gunman stormed in and slaughtered 11 of her fellow worshipers.
Do you ever wish that what would come out of the Tree of Life shooting isn't more hate, but a collective wake-up?
Absolutely. That has been my wish from the very beginning, that people would understand, but we've seen more shootings since then, more killing. People are not understanding.
I'm curious, just with you guys in the audience, how many Jewish citizens you think we have in America? Just by show of hands, do you think it's more than 35 million or less? If you think it's more, raise your hand. Okay. How many of you think it's between 15 and 25 million? Okay. How many of you think it's closer to 10 million? 7.6 million. And I say that because when you start getting attacked, you can feel pretty isolated. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Cohen, professor of rabbinic literature and former chair of that department at the Ziegler School. of rabbinic studies, and I'm really curious when you hear about this, and unfortunately, the escalation in hate crimes against the Jewish community is up over 59% in the last year, and it just doesn't seem to get much media attention, and it doesn't seem to get much attention from the law enforcement community. What do you think about that?
So first, thank you for having us here, Dr. Phil, for this really important conversation. And the first thing I want to say is to Joey, that was horrible. It's hard for me to talk about it. It was horrible.
Appreciate that.
I'm really sorry. There has been an uptick in anti-Semitic incidents over the past several years, though, to be honest, hate crimes in general and anti-Semitic crimes are down from the 90s. And it's not only anti-Semitic hate crimes, but hate crimes in general that have gone up in the last couple of years, but they've been down before then. And to step back for a minute, we have to realize every time there's been anti-Jewish violence and hate crimes in general, there's always a political context for it. And we're coming off of the Trump administration, which used the rhetoric of hate and violence. President Trump very famously said at his campaign rallies, kill them, beat them up, kick them out. So there are politicians, unfortunately, in this country and their corporate lobbyists who profit from a machinery of division and hatred. And this comes together with and smacks up against the problem that we have an enormous amount of guns in this country. And the people who have the guns are often the people who are also on the right and connected with white nationalism, white supremacy. And so what I feel about anti-Semitic attacks is that they're terrible, but they have to be understood within the larger context of this machinery of division and hatred. I was very impressed by our yesterday's show, and you mentioned the fact that one of the ways to overcome this hatred is by getting to know other communities, and that's the only way to create solidarity between communities, for communities to come together. And the people who are fomenting the hate and violence are afraid of that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We're going to speak to a woman who says the root of the increase in these hate crimes is white supremacy. We're going to hear from her next.
We have a long history, unfortunately, of anti-Semitism, of racism in this country. But we also have a long history of the very same people who are targeted for hate coming forward and saying, no, this is not what we're going to accept. We are going to make this country better and more just.
I can't tell you how many people I've had say, oh, talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this. A national issue that every parent needs to pay attention to.
The last thing he had to do to get into the fraternity was to drink a lot of alcohol.
911, what is your emergency? Oh my God, oh my God.
I resolved to find a way to make all of you an even bigger part of what we do here. I could think of no better way than to bring our studio audience right up here on stage. This is a cautionary tale.
They were like, get on webcam with me right now, or I'm going to send this to literally everybody you know.
Customers seem to be losing their cool at the drop of a hat. What the hell is going on? It is the #1 issue on everyone's mind. I'm talking about inflation. Oh boy, are we going to talk about that?
The suspects who attacked the patrons of the restaurant were cussing at Jewish people.
Police say 46-year-old Robert Bowers walked into the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh yelling anti-Semitic slurs and shooting at worshipers. CBS News has learned he had recently posted anti-Semitic threats on social media.
Well, we're back talking about the fight against anti-Semitic hate in America. We were talking about leaders that use rhetoric and can foment this kind of thing. And I said there's another side to that. And the other side to that is we don't have to listen to that at all. Everyone is still responsible for their own thoughts, their own actions. And clearly there are those people out there that are looking for somebody to validate them and say, oh, well, the leader says it, so it's okay. You know, you do that kind of thing, you're still going to be prosecuted. You're still going to be pursued and held to account. And this replacement theory that some of these conspirators keep referring to, the shooter in Buffalo, the Pittsburgh synagogue, the Christ Church in New Zealand, the Walmart shooting in El Paso, they all kind of come around and start hinting at this, that Jewish people are manipulating black and browns to replace white people. And I mean, where do they come up with this crap?
So I think actually that's an important point, that it's crap. It's not a theory.
I cleaned that up because I was speaking to a man in the clergy.
And as a rabbi, I only use language like that in very specific instances.
Yes, okay.
Especially instances where you're taking a mythology, you're taking something that's a blatant lie and using it as a legitimacy for killing people, for harming people. And that's why this whole notion of a replacement theory, which is the way some people justify to themselves why black people are excellent or brown people are immigrating, and as you said, the Pittsburgh shooter targeted that congregation because they were working with HIAS, an organization that helped immigrants. Think about it. This country was founded, and one of the central principles and values of this country is to bring all those who are looking for refuge home here.
Yeah.
And that is the value that caused this guy to go and kill 11 people in a synagogue, because he was afraid, in whatever addled mind he had, that these people were replacing him. So I wouldn't call that a theory. I'd call that a jumble of myth and lies.
Hate doesn't happen in a vacuum. So there are absolutely political leaders who are spreading lies that are driving this, but it's also really important that we enforce all of our civil rights protections.
Closed captioning provided by Joining me today is Becky Monroe, a Deputy Director of the Strategic Initiatives and External Affairs for California, and Mark Powell, former San Diego police officer, educator, and law enforcement analyst. Thank you so much for being here. You've even listened to everything we've been talking about. What do you add to this? What's the most important thing for people to think about for us to turn this tide?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and echo the others who are thanking you for bringing this issue to the fore. I think one thing that's really important for us to keep in mind is that hate is not new, and that the white supremacy that's driving this is not new. But what is new is that people do feel newly emboldened to commit acts of hate. And so I think there are many things that we can do. I work with the California Civil Rights Department. One of the things we've talked a lot about is making sure that when we talk about acts of hate, we are focusing on, just as you are, on the people who are targeted for hate, thinking about what are their needs. The other thing I think is really important is, as you've mentioned, hate doesn't happen in a vacuum. So there are absolutely political leaders who are spreading lies that are driving this, but it's also really important that we enforce all of our civil rights protections. So in employment, in housing, in schools, we need to make sure people's civil rights are protected and people are not discriminated against. One of the things that the rabbi said that I think is so powerful is that we have a long history, unfortunately, of anti-Semitism, of racism in this country. But we also have a long history of the very same people who are targeted for hate coming forward and saying, no, this is not what we're going to accept. We are going to make this country better and more just.
Because it would have been a lot easier for you to just, try to heal physically and move on, but you decided to give this a voice. Why?
Initially, honestly, I kind of probably want to just lie in bed and be left alone forever. But I gained a lot of strength from my friends, my family, organizations, politicians, I mean, people, non-Jews, people of all backgrounds. It really is just shocking to see that it's not just me, but there's plenty of people who are, because of who they are and how they look, they're just targeted, and it's not fair, it's not right, and no one should be afraid to leave their house.
Let me tell you, you have my respect. I can tell you
so
for
much.
sure.
It means a lot.
I'm telling you, this man's got a backbone. A revealing account of inside the world of violent hate groups by a one-time white supremacist leader who became an anti-hate activist. We're going to add him to this conversation, and we're going to talk to Mark when we come back as well. We'll be right back. A lot of police would have filed that report and not put that line in the report because they're not trained at what that triggers in terms of charges. Mark, that's a problem, right? People at the darkest hour of their life call Ben Crump.
He fought for the families of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin.
All we're trying to do is get America to see the humanity in people of color.
What is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome?
All white juries.
Fill in the blanks.
How does it feel knowing you've got enemies up there purely because of the color of your skin?
That's a great question.
Available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
We're back talking about the increase in violence against Jewish Americans, which is often dismissed and overlooked in conversations about hate crimes. I want to give a tip of my hat to the NYPD because they stepped up in this case and they found these guys and they've arrested them and they've charged them, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Here's a statement from the NYPD. On Thursday, May 20th, 2021, police responded to a 911 call of an assault in progress in the vicinity of 1604 Broadway. The preliminary investigation determined that the 29-year-old male was approached by a group of approximately 5 males who knocked him to the ground and assaulted him while making anti-Semitic statements. The individuals punched, kicked, pepper sprayed, and hit the victim with crutches during the assault. Now, the important line in there is anti-Semitic because a lot of police would have filed that report and not put that line in the report because they're not trained at what that triggers in terms of charges, in terms of laws. Now, Mark says reporting hate crimes is challenging because of community distrust and the voluntary reporting process. And Mark, that's a problem, right?
Absolutely, it's absolutely a problem, Dr. Phil. For example, in the assault, Joey, that's an assault is a battery, you were beaten. Without that word anti-Semitic attack, it doesn't reach the standard of a hate crime. For it to be a hate crime, it has to be based upon a person's religion, race, ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, and even their gender identity. But for a police officer, when they're investigating a crime, they're actually reporting on the crime. So they're going to ask pointed questions. They may not ask, hey, do you believe that person attacked you because you were Asian? They might ask you, though, why do you think that person attacked you? Because it could have been a simple road rage confrontation. So that's why it's very challenging for law enforcement. But the good news is, with video cameras, like when you video recorded, now you can get these all caught on tape. We have surveillance cameras everywhere. Back in the 80s, we didn't have these surveillance cameras. So a lot of these hate crimes went unprosecuted. I understand, Rabbi, you said hate crimes were down, but I do believe they were going on just as much. They just weren't recorded. We have video recording on our houses. We have video recording in the streets, and we're vastly able to identify hate crimes more so than we could years back.
Why do so many young people lose themselves in a culture of hatred and violence? Well, I mentioned before, a former white supremacist is going to explain that. He lived hate, he breathed hate, he seethed it, and then something woke him up. What was it? We're going to hear from him next.
I thought I hated Jews. I thought I hated blacks. The truth is, I had never met a Jewish person before then. I had so much self-hatred in who I was that I was projecting that onto other people so that they could feel it, so that I wouldn't have to feel that pain in it.
My next guest, Christian, says he was recruited into a hate group at age 14. Why? Number one need is acceptance. He wanted to belong. He wanted to feel accepted. He says he eventually had a change of heart, renounced his hateful beliefs, and turned his life around. Christian, you told our producers that trying to argue with extremists about hate doesn't work. Why do you say that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that people don't join hate groups because of the ideology primarily at the very beginning. It's a search for identity, community, and purpose. Acceptance, like you said, is really important. And for me, at 14 years old, I was really searching for a place to belong. So, in 1987, I was standing in an alley one day. I was smoking a joint. I had already started to show maladaptive behaviors because I was searching for something. And a man came up to me, and he pulled the joint from my mouth, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, "That's what the Jews want you to do to keep you docile." I was 14. I didn't know if I'd met a Jewish person. I didn't even know what the word docile meant. But it was the first time in my life that I felt as though somebody had started to pay attention to me. And it didn't really matter to me what he said after that. What mattered to me was that I had found a place and I had felt empowered by this man.
When you look back at the things that you believed, the things that group did, that gang did at the time, can you even imagine being involved in that at this point?
No, I mean, I can tell you that I thought I hated Jews. I thought I hated blacks. I thought I hated all immigrants. And in fact, I came from a family of immigrants myself. The truth is, I had never met a Jewish person before then. I really had very little experience around other people that were unlike me. So what was happening for me was I had so much self-hatred in who I was that I was projecting that onto other people so that they could feel it, so that I wouldn't have to feel that pain anymore. I spent 8 years in the American white supremacist neo-Nazi skinhead movement, and it wasn't until I actually started to meet some of the people that I thought I hated that my opinion started to change, that I started to receive compassion from them when I didn't deserve it. And that experience changed me.
What happened when you had a child?
My purpose suddenly changed from wanting to scorch the earth to wanting to build a better earth for my children and all the other people that lived in it. And it changed my life because I finally found something to love.
All of those groups seem to feel put upon and downtrodden, and they have to find somebody to look down on. They don't want to be on the bottom rung. They got to find somebody that they feel superior to.
I think that actually is the most important thing that we've said here, is that there is the ideology of white supremacy says that only one group can win. And if we want to win, everybody else has to lose. When we're creating a more perfect union, it means that everybody can win. There is enough to go around. We don't have to live in an economy of scarcity. If I get something, that doesn't have to be at your expense. It has to be the opposite. There is enough for all of us.
Do you guys think this was a worthwhile discussion to have?
Absolutely.
I'm glad. I hope so. I hope you guys feel like you learned something, got something out of it today. I know I have, and we all gained a new perspective and hope. We will continue to talk about this important topic for however long it takes to help combat these vicious crimes in America. Switching gears a bit, coming up, we'll meet a mother who made a discovery about herself while helping her 11-year-old daughter. We'll hear their story next. My next guest, Mary, is a stay-at-home mom of 2. When her youngest daughter, Mindy, started falling behind in school, she admits she just chalked it up to anxiety. But additional testing resulted in an official diagnosis, and Mary soon realized Mindy wasn't the only one struggling.
My daughter Mindy is a very energetic, very caring, and athletic child.
I play soccer and I love playing sports.
Mindy and I have always been really close. She's like my mini-me. Teachers realized that there was a problem with Mindy in school and that she was falling behind in her schoolwork.
I felt weird because other students were doing better than me.
To see Mindy struggle in school, I have felt helpless at times.
I was diagnosed with dyslexia. When I see words on a page, I flip-flop the words. She is a good friend, but she doesn't like playing soccer. Other kids think I read funny because I stop when I read.
Observing Mindy's struggles, I realized I might have dyslexia too. Does it make you feel better to know that Mommy sees and does some of the same things that you do?
Yeah. I have a special name for dyslexia, and I call it my superpower, because not everybody has it.
Mindy doesn't want to be embarrassed by having dyslexia. We're making sure this does not control our lives.
Well, Mary and Mindy are joining me, along with my friend, Dr. Brian Walensky, a low-vision optometrist and Orcam technology ambassador. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Mary, you say you were never officially diagnosed with dyslexia. So what makes you believe you're dyslexic like your daughter Mindy?
Well, Dr. Farrell, I've always thought I had a visual issue, like it was my vision. But as we've worked through the process with Mindy and I've seen all the things she struggles with her schoolwork and her reading, I realize I have some of the same issues.
Yeah. Well, as a mom, it must be tough watching your daughter struggle, obviously. How have you been able to handle this?
Well, for both of us, reading has been very difficult and very time-consuming and challenging, but she has such a positive attitude and outlook on this.
Yeah. Now, Mindy, in the tape piece earlier, you mentioned dyslexia is your superpower. What do you mean by that?
I say that because not every kid has dyslexia, and that makes me different and unique.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful attitude to have, and you're doing a great job navigating your diagnosis. You should be really proud of yourself. I mean, seriously.
Thank you.
I mean, don't you guys think she's got a great attitude about this? And Dr. Walensky, it's so good to have you back. Mary and Mindy certainly aren't the only ones struggling with reading, right?
That's right. There are millions of people that struggle with reading challenges, like dyslexia. And unfortunately, many go undiagnosed, like Mary.
Right. And you know about an assistive technology device that you know I'm a huge fan of that can really help people with dyslexia. So tell us about it, if you would.
Sure. Orcam Read is a breakthrough technology that's used by tens of thousands of individuals. The device reads text out loud from printed materials, also on digital screens, and it all happens in real time. It really gives independence to someone with a reading challenge like dyslexia, but also for someone who is visually impaired. It also takes away stress and also the fear of reading.
Oh, wow. All right. Is it difficult to use?
Not at all. Orcam Read is the only handheld reading device that's activated intuitively, yet just by a point-and-click feature, or I can just use voice commands, and it all works without connectivity.
Can you show us how it works?
Sure, I'll show you how it works. I'll read a passage from The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. Hey, Orcam, smart reading. Start from Dorothy.
Dorothy sat up and noticed that the house was not moving.
This is a great device for anyone in the workplace, but it can be really beneficial for students as well, right?
Absolutely. The OrCam Read is recommended by special education teachers, reading specialists, and also is approved by many state agencies as an assistive technology tool.
And, you know, because we've been working together for a long time, I've had the opportunity to talk to people that have used this. What do you think about this device?
That's pretty incredible. It would actually help a lot for people like myself and Mindy.
You're exactly right. And Dr. Walensky, I understand that you have a little more information to share.
I definitely do. I'm really excited not only to meet you guys, but also to let you know that OrCam is gifting you each a device of your own to take home, and so you can read independently.
I've just heard so many people talk about it. And if you or someone you know could benefit from having an OrCam Read, or if you'd like more information, just visit their website at orcam.com. I just think it's a huge breakthrough. And as a Dr. Phil viewer, when you do that, you'll receive a $250 discount if you purchase the OrCam Read in the next 7 days. And I'm really proud of that because I think this makes a huge difference. I'd like to thank all of my guests today. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mindy, for sharing your story. And a special thanks to Dr. Brian Walensky, who has a great passion for this, and of course to OrCam. I would like to thank Deputy Director of Strategic Initiatives and External Affairs for California State, Becky Monroe, Law Enforcement Analyst Mark Powell, Attorney Sandy Rojas, and Rabbi Cohen. Thank you all so much. As I mentioned yesterday, the increase in hate crimes is such a nationwide issue that President Biden will host the United We Stand Summit this Thursday at the White House to counter the corrosive effects of hate-fueled violence on our democracy and public safety. An Eradicate Hate Global Summit takes place next week from September 19th through the 21st in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. For more information about today's episode, or if you'd like to share your story, log on to drphil.com. If you're going to be in Los Angeles, or you plan to be, and you'd like to join us on stage in our studio audience, click on Be Part of the Audience. The tickets are free. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to my podcast, where I provide really critical information about some of the most important issues we're facing today, personally, family-wise.